Iraq's Ain al-Assad airbase has been attacked, which of course houses U.S. military members, Iraqi military members, and other international partners. Now, the reason why this is actually significant is because if you've been following the U.S. military in the Middle East, as far as Iraq goes, it's actually been really, really peaceful lately, and now all of a sudden you're getting attacked by Iranian-backed militia groups, which has been confirmed. We'll get to that in a bit. But again, Ain al-Assad Air Base is a significant base that's just due west from Baghdad. I will show you guys the geographical location here soon. But again, I want to set this picture up for you that on October 7th of 2023, which if you are unaware, this is when Hamas decided to go in on Israel and do their thing, other Iranian-backed militia groups have started to go after the U.S. military as a response for the U.S.'s support with Israel, which means U.S. military members were almost attacked day in and day out since October 7, 2023. But then all of a sudden, there was a moment of peace, as in 3 months of peace. The last time the U.S. military saw any sort of engagement or was attacked last was all the way in April, and this was your typical one-way drone attack. There was also an attack that occurred in February, but again, nothing too significant. So there was this moment of peace about 3 months where the U.S. military said, hey, everything is a-okay, but now all of a sudden we're starting to see maybe the potential for something new. Now, the group is unconfirmed on who exactly did it, but the U.S. military is actually putting out that this was most likely done by Iranian-backed militia groups who have always been very public and cannot stand the U.S. military inside of Iraq. Especially now that the U.S. military is supposed to be downsizing and really actually potentially leaving Iraq fully. We'll see what happens with that. Iran really wants to show that, hey, we want to enter inside of Iraq. We want our militant groups to kind of threaten or to mess with the U.S. military until the last man or the last boot leaves the country of Iraq. So again, reporting from Reuters, drones target Iraq's Ain al-Assad airbase. No casualties, says military sources. And again, this has actually been confirmed by the U.S. military. 2 armed drones on Tuesday targeted Iraq's Ain al-Assad airbase, which hosts U.S. forces and other international forces in western Iraq. 2 Iraqi military sources told Reuters. It was the second attack against U.S. forces in Iraq since early February when Iranian-backed groups in Iraq stopped their attacks against troops. Now, if you are unaware, there is a clip that is kind of circling around. I'm not even going to play it for you because it's like 2 seconds, where Joe Biden told Iran, don't think about it, don't do it. This was in reference to Iran potentially saying, you know what, we might actually go after U.S. forces not only in Iraq, maybe in Syria. If you are unaware, whenever you look into the U.S. military having any sort of engagements or any sort of offensive operations or defensive operations, we're really only talking about the Navy with the Houthis and maybe some potential clandestine operations within Syria, but mostly you're hearing about the Navy. Now, furthermore, no casualties have been reported. An Iraqi military official said defense systems downed 1 drone near the base perimeter. Iraqi army patrols stepped up patrolling the areas around the base to prevent possible further attacks. The attack came less than a week before an expected visit by a high-level Iraqi military delegation to Washington continues talks on ending the U.S.-led military coalition in the country. And again, just a few months ago, there was this potential for the U.S. military to fully 100% not get kicked out of Iraq, but definitely just get out of Iraq. And there have been, even from the Prime Minister of Iraq, he's notion that, yeah, I think we're done with the U.S. mission, but the government of Iraq, I think, is still truly trying to figure out, are we going to get 100% cooperation from regional partners? And this is where the country of Iran sort of steps in and says, you know what, we want to step in, we want to work together, we're neighboring countries, let's do this. But of course, when Iran also has these clandestine units known as their militia groups who sort of scatter throughout the Middle East, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Yemen, whether it's Lebanon, Iran has these underground troops where really at a moment's notice can do whatever Iran wants them to do. I think Iraq is actually rather hesitant to really pull the trigger and really work hand in hand with Iran. Understand, Iran and Iraq have had their fair share of battles and have actually gone to war with one another. Furthermore, Washington and Baghdad in January initiated talks to reassess the drawdown of the U.S.-led coalition, Iraq, formed in 2014 to help fight IS after the extremist Sunni group overran large parts of the country. Like I had mentioned, this was a very serious talk, and the U.S. military potentially was going to be actually, again, not getting kicked out of Iraq, but definitely talking of the U.S. military to just leave Iraq and go do something else. We can handle it from here, which is actually happening in Africa right now, in the country of Nigeria, Africa. Now, one thing I do want to mention, once again, it has been confirmed. This is on Open Source Defender, but they source straight from the U.S. military, typically known as Central Command, whose area of operation is the Middle East right now. U.S. defense officials have now confirmed that American troops at al-Assad airbase and the Anbar governorate of western Iraq were targeted today by Iranian-backed forces for the first time since April. Typically, you're actually able to correlate an Iranian-backed militia group. They will typically put out statements either on X directly, or they do it on Telegram, or maybe they'll do it on Al Jazeera. I haven't found any faction who's actually done this, but again, it is most likely believed to be an Iranian-backed faction. Targeted today by Iranian-backed forces for the first time since April with a pair of one-way aerial attack drones. Now, not too long ago, again, before the 3 months of peace, this seemed to really be the strategy as far as going after U.S. troops. With success, after like literally 90 attacks of day in and day out, it was either between 70 or 90. I don't want you guys to forget that there actually was a successful attack in the country of Jordan. I just want to re-summarize what happened, because obviously I don't want to forget about fallen troops, because they're sacrificing their lives day in and day out. But one thing I do want to say is that the strategy seemed to really be, and the Houthis are doing this too, just send in as many drones as you can, and eventually there has to be a way that maybe we can slip through these drone defenses. Maybe the U.S. military was not paying attention. And it just so happened in this particular attack, the group who did the attack just happened to hit at a very weak point where the U.S. military was like in the middle of a change of command. And yeah, systems were still being set up. So again, this happened in January 29, 2024. This was a really big deal at the time, but because the news cycle is always flowing, I'm sure a lot of us forgot about this. 3 U.S. soldiers were taken out yesterday in Jordan, while more than 40 service members were injured following an uncrewed aerial system attack at a military base near the Syrian border. Those service members were in Jordan to support Operation Inherent Resolve, which is the U.S. and coalition mission to ensure to defeat IS. Again, this is a total package mission where U.S. soldiers are either in Jordan, either in Syria, either in Iraq. IS is all over the world. It's just a general blanket statement as far as a militant group. And of course, let's just say the name of the soldiers. Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, Specialist Kennedy LaDon Sanders, and Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffett. So yeah, I just didn't want us to forget that this happened back in January. And again, when you look into what actually happened, it's not that the U.S. military was slacking. There was definitely just a mishap. And yeah, it's very unfortunate. Now, I did promise you guys I would show you the exact location of where an al-Assad base is. It's a rather significant base. It's a rather prominent base. And it's situated in a very strategic position as far as Iraq. That's why the U.S. military is stationed there. It's not on the border of Iran, so you can sort of get away with surveillance operations or direct operations, whether in airstrikes, surveillance, things like that. So that is why Iranian-backed militia groups go after al-Assad air base. I don't know the specific number as far as how many times the base has been attacked, but I think it's upwards in about 20-ish, possibly, as far as like attacks that have been occurring since October 7th of 2023, before the 3 months of peace. Now, something else I do want to mention is that we do have new U.S. forces and really fresh boots, if you will, or fresh fighters, if you will. The USS Theodore Roosevelt and its carrier strike group arrive in the Middle East. So they replaced the Eisenhower carrier strike group, and the Roosevelt really has a lot of heavy lifting to do, or they really have to prove themselves, because the Eisenhower had a 9-month deployment, and they really went in on Iranian-backed militant groups. Again, whether it's in Yemen's Houthi territories, some strikes that occurred in Syria, but their area of operation also does fall in Iraq. So this is why this is rather relevant as far as air support or air superiority over the country of Iraq. Because this right here is going to be your main deterrent as far as Iran trying to push something towards the U.S. military. Iran's professional military or conventional forces, they're definitely not going to want to fight the U.S. one-on-one. But all day, every day, Iran is willing to subject their militia groups on U.S. forces, especially in Iraq, where it's already super unstable. The U.S. military doesn't have the best rap out there. In fact, a lot of Iraqis just want them gone because they've gone through hell and back as far as the war in Iraq and other militant groups. 3 weeks after its deployment was announced, the USS Theodore Roosevelt and its supporting carrier strike group are now operating in the waters off of Yemen. The U.S. Navy ships are the latest contingent to be sent to the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden to deal with the months-long conflict against Yemen's Houthi militants. And if we just look at a map real quick. Although Yemen is all the way down here, understand the Mediterranean and the Red Sea are right over here. So it's not hard for these strike groups just to relocate or to put their ships where they need to be put. Again, this is a deterrent towards Iran. And the Houthis, they fall under Iran as far as militant groups. So that is why it is important to still contain Houthi elements. So yeah, Ain al-Assad base, hopefully this is not the new chapter as far as militants being okay with going after the U.S. military. Maybe this was a symbolic attack because there is going to be a prominent Iraqi general coming to Washington. Maybe it was just a stray attack to see, you know what, just to remind the U.S. military we are still around. But again, I am going to be tracking this. Make sure you follow my social medias, and we will catch you guys later. Again, everybody is safe. Nobody got hurt. It's still never a good thing when U.S. military members get attacked and its partners because, again, one wrong move by the U.S. military can result in soldiers not being around anymore like we saw in Jordan. So it's very important the U.S. military keeps their eyes on the skies and trusts their equipment.